And again, I just urge the body to resist the amendment. Deportation does not equal justice, and so we want to focus on the justice part in our law. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Would the floor leader please rise for a couple questions? Hey, good morning.
Morning.
I'm trying to understand your position. I think I'm coming from a point that I am confused on it, same as the minority whip up there. You're saying that, well, let's say if you had a scenario where another state has a sanctuary law, and maybe that person was arrested for rape, they're an illegal alien, and they're on pretrial release. And then they're picked up in someplace in Maryland. Oh no, let's say a DWI. Now your position is not to contact ICE, but to let them go into the community because you want them to go to trial?
So first of all, sanctuary is not a legal term of art. I just want the body to be very clear about that. There's no Supreme Court opinion or any type of legal definition as it relates to the word sanctuary. So I just want to make that point. Second of all, what we are proposing here is that if someone was arrested in another state for a crime, they were released on pretrial and decided to come here to Maryland. When they were arrested in that other state, their fingerprints would have gone into the federal NICS system, which ICE is a part of. And so if there was an active detainer for that individual in that other state, ICE would have received notification because of the NICS system that operates. And so they would have ICE still would have been notified even in that particular state that you're inferring about. So whether or not ICE decides not to come get them, that has nothing to do with us. That has to do with ICE.
Well,
and ICE has every right to say, you know, we see the notification, but we're not going to go and get that person. But that has nothing to do with what's before us right now. So I can't.
I think maybe you misunderstood my question because you kind of talked around that. The person's in jail for DWI, which is normally let go in what? 7 or 8 hours.
Right.
Your position is that you're going to let that person back out into the community.
Actually, a judge would make that determination whether or not they would be let back out into the community.
But the bill is to stop any corrections officers from contacting ICE, correct?
Yeah, the judge would make that determination. The judge is going to look to see, oh, there's an outstanding warrant. They're going to look at any prior convictions of that individual during pretrial to make a determination whether or not to release that individual on bond or not. That's typically what happens under our judicial system, with or without this agreement. That will still continue to take place.
So that's a long verbiage for yes. You're releasing that person.
No, that's not a yes.
Out.
That is a no.
So
again,
that's what we just said the last 3 times that we had amendments, that this person are going to withstand trial. Your position is to release them back out into the community.
What I'm saying, I'm not saying to release them back into the community. What I'm saying is that we're going to let the system do what the system is supposed to do and provide due process for that individual. That individual is picked up on a DWI. They're going to be placed in a local detention center, and then they're going to have a bail review hearing. And at that point, a judge is going to make a determination about what should happen with that individual, okay? And that determination is going to be made by a judge in our state, in our court system. And whether a 287G agreement exists or not is irrelevant. And we're going to hold that person accountable for that DWI here in the state of Maryland.
Well, the majority leader in the previous debate just said in Harford County, 100% of those people were picked up in small traffic offenses and turned over to ICE. This is a very serious charge. So I can see the same situation playing out that you're saying, that you have a rapist that might have been previously convicted or under pretrial from somewhere else that has a very more liberal opinion, And the position in Maryland, if they're in Maryland on a secondary charge, is to let them go back out into the street. And my question to you is, how does that make my citizens that I represent any safer? To return a criminal, previously convicted sex offender back out into the street that has no ties to this community.
Right, if a judge thinks that that person is a danger to society, that judge is not going to allow the release of that individual back into society. That person will continue to be held until their trial. That's how our system works.
So if you don't have the 287G, how are you even figuring out who that person is?
The judge will be looking at the facts.
Every person that goes and is arrested, whether it's for drunk and disorderly, is going to go in front of that judge, and that judge is going to make that decision?
Yeah, that's our system. That is how our system works.
One final question for you. Since we're trusting illegal aliens that are criminals to come back for a trial, like my friend from Charles County said, do you have any data that shows how many people don't come back to trial if they're in that situation?
Just in general?
In general.
No, I don't have that data in front of me, but I'm sure the judiciary can provide that to you.
I'd be interested to hear that, because I'm looking online at some statistics, since we're quoting statistics, that 34% of non-detained respondents don't even show up for removal orders of court hearings. So we keep talking about all this justice. We need to come back here and have for justice. Once you let these people out, they have no ties to the community, they're not from around here, guess what? You don't get justice because they're out of here. And then ICE is running after them throughout the community and arresting them in the community because you didn't arrest them in the jail. And that's exactly what the situation that's going on up in Minnesota now. It's chaos, and it's caused by politicians and these silly policies like that. I stand to support the gentleman's amendment because it's common sense that we don't want rapists returned to our communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Again, I ask that we stick to the amendment that is before us, and I'm going to trust the judges that we have in our state to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question for the floor leader.
Sure.
Good morning.
Mr. Whip.
How are you, District Mate? I have a question, because there's been a lot of talk about the agreements being needed, the agreements having to be in place. You know, there are several states that are very similar to ours in thought and in majority that no longer have these agreements. How do they determine someone in the court system is undocumented?
Yeah, so as was stated earlier, with the states that no longer have these agreements, it does not prevent ICE, if there is an active detainer for that individual, to still come and pick up that individual. ICE still would have that active detainer on file for that individual, and they would still have every right to still come up, pick up that individual in states where these agreements are banned.
So the most recent state, to my knowledge, that has passed a prohibition of these agreements is Delaware. Mm-hmm. Do you think Delaware has an increase of undocumented folks wreaking havoc on their communities?
Not that I'm aware of.
What about New Jersey?
Not that I'm aware of.
California?
No.
Thank you. I have a question now for the maker of the amendment.
Yes.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I want to talk about facts, since that's what you want to focus on.
Absolutely.
Out of the last 7 years in this state where we've had detainers, do you know the number of people that were detained?
I do not.
I will educate you on this morning. It is 771 people. Do you think that's a lot of folks that have been arrested on ICE detainers?
No.
Okay, well, out of that 771, do you know the percentage or the number of them that were convicted of a level 1 offense, one of the offenses that are listed in your amendment?
I do not.
4, so 0.5%. Do you think that is because ICE isn't good at their job? Do you think that's because our local law enforcement isn't doing a good job of trying to detain some of the most serious offenders in our communities?
I can't speak to that.
Well, I can. I think we have some of the best law enforcement in the country here in our state, and they're doing the best job that they can with the tools necessary. 287G clearly is not one of those tools that is getting violent offenders that are based in this amendment off of our streets. And so I ask our colleagues to vote no on the amendment. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question for you is it safer for the community and our immigrant community for these notifications and these handoffs to happen at the jail or in the community?
I think what is safer is that we have policies that reflect the moment. Right now, to answer your question, since I've been asked, we are not seeing the best and brightest coming out of our federal law enforcement. We are not seeing the best and brightest enforcement happening at that level. And so what I want is actual law enforcement. I have 7 municipalities in my district, and all 7 have reached out with concerns around how do we figure out how to best coordinate. Because the feds are not talking to our local law enforcement. They're not saying, hey, I'm coming into this community or that community in the county that I represent, in the municipalities that I represent. So to your question about whether or not it's safer, I don't think in this moment the federal law enforcement is providing the best practices when it comes to keeping our community safe.
That wasn't my question. That was what my question was.
That was my answer.
With respect to my question is this. Well, you're not answering my question, sir. What my question is this. Is it safer for ICE to be notified at the jail to make a determination to put a detainer at the jail, or for after the fact, I still have to go into a community, an immigrant community, and not only go into the community and some of the collateral things that go along with that, but also have collateral deportations by having to go identify the individual in the community? Is it safer for it to happen at the jail, or is it safer to happen in the community?
I think the question...
It's only one or the other.
Well, no, I get the answer. You get the ask. So my answer is, the question that you ask puts up a scenario in which, one, immigrants only live with immigrants. That's not the case. Immigrants live in very diverse communities, as you know. And so the collateral damage to people is magnified, period, because of the practices that are happening right now through this federal law enforcement. And so I agree. Having ICE agents in our communities is not safe. I'm glad you agree that having ICE agents in our communities is not safe. What I'm simply saying is, on this amendment, it does not help keep our community safe by saying that they have to do the notification.
Again, 2 times in your statement, you assumed my position on things. Not the case. I simply ask a simple question. Which one is safer?
I've answered your question. I don't think you're going to get anything else out of me. But on the amendment, Madam Speaker, I ask our colleagues to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no? No. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, explain my vote.
The gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
I just want to explain why I'm voting for this amendment. We've had several amendments now on crimes that are affecting the most vulnerable, and we don't seem to be able to come to any agreement. We listen to people's opinions, and that's fine. I would submit that this bill really isn't ready for prime time if we're sitting here talking about how we protect children and we can't come to a unified agreement that they are paramount, and we have to sit back and nitpick about this or that. The bottom line is, people don't go, when they get charged for something, they don't necessarily go anywhere. But we're trying to make something finite here, and we can't seem to come to an agreement. Maybe this bill needs to go back and get work done. Thank you.
Explain my vote.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
To explain my green vote, but mostly to respond to a comment that was just made, quote, "We don't have the best and brightest going into law enforcement." And I wholeheartedly disagree with you on that. I have family in law enforcement. Our law enforcement are wonderful, hardworking, dedicated individuals, and I don't think that was appropriate. Thank you.
Recognizing.
Thank you. And explaining my no vote on this amendment and explaining further the comments that was made since it was referenced. The comment was that we do have the best and brightest here in our state at our local and state levels. What isn't happening, unfortunately, is the recruitment of the best and brightest to our federal force. And while I have police officers in my family, my aunt and uncle both served over 20 plus years in law enforcement, I know very personally the sacrifices that folks have. So I want our body to know that here the majority understands the sacrifices that law enforcement makes every single day. The choices they have to make every single day are choices that I choose not to make. That's why I get to sit on this floor with all of you. But I understand that my communities are protected. The law enforcement folks who suit up every day are protecting us. But unfortunately, the folks at the federal level aren't doing their best. They aren't sending their brightest. And until that improves, I will always stand on those words. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing